Okay, Dan, welcome back to Face.
Good morning, Dale.
How are
How
you?
are you?
How are you, my sound money guru? How are you today?
Busy, very busy. In the last
Uh,
few days, it's been very, very busy.
I don't recall you usually don't share your screen, right? We just talk and I
Yes,
go over some.
I can. Which one now? Okay,
All right, so
so
it's a green box. Drop down menu says share screen,
okay,
and then you click it, and you'll have your choice of screens to show.
okay. So let's go with this one. Uh, okay, can you
Okay,
see my chart?
got it. Got it. So you're showing a 1 minute tick chart for a long-term telescopic sound money investor. I find it unusual. What are you looking at here?
Well, this is an intraday
Yeah,
chart of gold. What's happening this morning? So you see here that. It was sideways in Asia, even if it started going up in the morning, it went
right,
sideways and then it broke up when European trading started. It went up to close to 1780. It did not
right.
cross it. And as it happens very often, just before or after US market opens, it usually gets hit and pushed back. But this is an intraday, so it's only from 1778 to 1766, 67, if you want.
Right.
So it's a very small attack, if you want, takedown. But it happens regularly in when the U.S. trading starts. You have that into gold.
Okay, you could call
So
that a small takedown. Would you consider what's happening in silver today with gold still, hanging in there, a body slam?
let's put the silver one. Here it is, and then you
Yeah,
can see it's a much bigger one.
right,
What you have to understand, and I think I've mentioned it several times, and I say it regularly. I'm being asked about silver. Why doesn't silver do the same thing as gold? First of all, uh, silver has a very good correlation in a monetary crisis with gold, but it's not a perfect correlation. It
right.
lags behind. It lags behind gold. So gold, silver waits for gold to give the signal before it moves. And if when gold goes down a little bit, silver goes on steroids even lower. When gold goes up,
Right.
silver waits a little bit. And then when he sees a clear signal from gold, it goes up on steroids.
Well,
Even on short,
recent market history, Dan, has shown that in action live because the gold silver ratio came down from 125 to under 100, and that's when silver was outperforming. But that 95 level is what's turning it back up. And to me, it looks like your theory about gold holding up much better than silver is going to come into play here. Could it be because perhaps there's going to be some risk off after these huge recoveries we've had in world bourses, and silver is going to be much more vulnerable to pressure if we get some type of pressure in equity markets?
yeah, silver is a very, I wouldn't say weird, but you have to study it and understand it to see the relation. A lot of analysts get confused about the price patterns of silver. From a fundamental point of view, silver is much more an industrial metal today than it is a monetary metal. But that's what the confusing thing, that when there is a monetary crisis, like we've been since 2008, silver increases its correlation to gold
Right.
from somewhere 50 to about very close to above 90. Even at the top of the crisis, it's going to be 100% correlation with gold. So what it means is that, and what confuses analysts, fundamental analysts, that they look at the fundamental data and they say silver should be going down because silver is an industrial metal. But it isn't. In a crisis, it becomes the poor man's gold, and it starts to correlate and to copy the moves of gold. And this is the situations we are getting into it now. We are already, and we have seen the correlation of silver to gold increase very high, above 80%. And that's what usually is. So don't look at silver as being industrial in this environment at this moment. It waits for gold. Gold is money. Gold is the hard money, the alternative to all the currencies. And when silver sees gold moving up, it's poor man's gold, and it starts to move with gold. And that's what we're seeing. When gold starts to go down, silver says, well, I'm an industrial metal, and the economy at this moment doesn't go very well, so I'm going to go down with the industrial metals. But you have to be very careful, because the more the monetary crisis intensifies, the more silver joins gold, and it joins after a certain moment, it goes on steroids. It goes faster than gold.
Right, Dan. Let's switch gears a little bit to what could be around the corner geo-wise in precious metals. There's, in my view, a Cold War with China going on between the U.S. and in this COVID environment. I've heard some talk that there could be an intentional move by the U.S. government to revalue the dollar higher to use as a tool against the Chinese. What do you think of that narrative?
Yeah, I think that the situation is impossible for the U.S. government to revalue the U.S. dollar upwards. It will revalue the dollar to the downside. Okay. In the recent months, I've been one of the rare who's been saying that the move of the U.S. dollar is people are looking at the day trading, the short-term moves of the U.S. dollar index. And I think that that's a very big mistake. I'm going to put you a chart here so we can see it much better. I put that chart regularly. So what you're seeing here now on the screen, you see the price of gold versus the US dollar index. Now it shows here that there is recently, actually in the last few days, it has been going down. But those who are looking at 6 months, that means since January, if they look at the chart, you can see here that the US dollar has not done much. I'm going to put the 20 years chart. Okay. That's from the beginning of the bull market in gold in 2000. Now look at this chart over here. What they call a bull market, from a pure technical perspective, you had a triangle formation that ended up with a move up, a break up to the upside for the US dollar, that made dollar bulls very enthusiastic, and American exceptionalists, they went crazy and they said, this is a century dollar supremacy coming back. But look at what happened. It did a flag over here from a technical perspective. Now, a flag is a formation that indicates a continuation, a pause, and then a continuation, which predicted that from the breakout from this triangle terminal formation, bottoming formation, it indicated a move that should go to about 120, 130 in the DXY in the US dollar index. But look what happened. It broke up in a perfect technical formation breakout, but it failed. That breakout failed returned down within the flag, and then broke down to the downside. So reversing that flag formation, indicating that that was a false signal to the upside. But what happened is that after giving that false signal of going to the downside, it reversed and started going up, giving a boost to the bull dollar traders that were still back into that going up to 120 for the US dollar index. But look what happened. It didn't go anywhere. So for 5 years, if you take the average, the US dollar has done absolutely nothing. Okay, it's been flat. With this false signals to the upside, to the downside, you have here in the short term, if you can see it, let's put a 6 month again.
What if we took out 103 in the dollar? Would that change your mind?
Look at here. It went up and then it went down. What I want to make a mention here is that when you're dealing with currencies, you are dealing with government intervention on a daily basis.
Yes.
Those who look at the Chinese yuan and say, well, the Chinese manipulate their currency, the Europeans manipulate their currency, they forget that the US government has been the biggest currency manipulator in the last 50 years at least, but they started in the 60s with the London gold pool and manipulating the price of the dollar. So those technical patterns seem to break down when there is major government intervention in the market. Yeah, I mentioned to you in the last webinar that technical analysis is a methodology that works in a market, in a pure market. If the market is distorted, if the buyers and sellers are being distorted by manipulators at a large scale, like the government, the referee in the game, then technical analysis starts to give you false signals. And that's what has been happening since 2005, when the Fed started intervening in the markets in an excessive way. The technical indicators are starting to give on a regular basis false signals, because the Treasury, the Fed, when they see technical signals that you see and I see, they intervene and they cut it down, bring the market into the direction that the government wants it to go. So you see that in the US dollar index. But in general, I'll put you a long-term chart of the dollar and gold. Now, this is since the collapse of the dollar gold exchange system that collapsed in 1971. So look at that. From 1971, it went down. Then Volcker came and gave good feelings in 1980.
Yeah, he took the rate. He didn't give good feelings. He gave us a shock in interest rates. Dan, I'd like to move towards the current. We're kind of familiar with the history of gold. What's on your radar right now that may be dollar, gold, market moving, geo events, or government events? How are you looking at the U.S. election? That's going to be contentious, possibly. There's not going to be a graceful transfer of power. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, the election it's certainly going to affect the market, the stock market, because the stock market has been identified with Donald Trump excessively, and Donald Trump looks at the stock market as his scorecard. So, and the Fed is manipulating the stock market with intervention in the market extensively. What happens, so that will have an impact on the price, on the stock market, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500, and it's going to have an effect also on the dollar and the price of gold. But those are, in a way, if you want, short-term moves. As of now, you have the price of gold has been in all-time high territory in all the currencies. I put this morning, I put it every day, charts of the SDR, which is a basket of the most important trade-weighted currencies, and also on the currency index. And gold has broken to the upside on all-time high in all the currencies. Recently, it crossed an all-time high in the Swiss franc, which is very important because Swiss franc is, for me, the cleanest dirty shirt, not the US dollar like many believe. The cleanest dirty shirt of currencies, of fiat currencies, is the Swiss franc. And recently, gold has crossed in all-time high territory in Swiss francs. There are two currencies in which the dollar has not crossed in all high territory, is the Japanese yen, but it is very close to doing it. And as you can see here on this chart, in US dollars is getting very close. It's around $150 from the high. It's gonna take it out, quite sure. Now I've become more certain that it's gonna do it somewhere during the summer, because as you asked me, what do you think about the politics? It looks that in the last 1.5–2 months, coronavirus response by Trump has been a political disaster, a total disaster. And because of that, we are seeing more recently with his last event that he did, which was a total collapse, and we're seeing a resurgence of coronavirus in strong Republican states like Texas and Florida. And the recent polls and everything shows that the image of Donald Trump and the polls are showing that he's not doing very well at all. Now, my interpretation when it comes to the markets is that that is very bullish for gold, and it is bearish for the US dollar and the stock market. And we have seen the move, the recent move in gold, and I think that my probability is very high that gold will break out in US dollars above the all-time high in the next 2 months. By August, I would say you'll see gold taking out the all-time high, which is 1921, something like that. So as the polls of Donald Trump degenerate, you will see gold outperforming even better than I expected. So if polls, the market see that there is going to be a defeat, a major defeat of Donald Trump, and that the Republicans will lose the Senate and the House, in that case, long before November, first week of November, when it's the election, you will see the markets integrating that information and pushing gold above the all-time high of 1920, and even cross that psychological level of 2000, and do it before November election. If Donald Trump reverses that tendency, because you have to keep in mind that Biden is not a strong candidate either. Up to now, Biden has not performed in an exceptional manner. He just sat there and watched Trump collapse and do all kinds of mistakes. So he's not also a great candidate, so it could reverse. So what happens if all of a sudden we see in July and August a resurgence of Donald Trump in the polls? And in that case, you are going to see a slowdown, you'll see gold not taking out the all-time high of 1920, not cross the psychological level of 2000, and maybe go down a little bit, but not much. 1700, it's the lowest that I see going down. But I could see it on election night, and the next day, if Donald Trump wins, I see a gold taking a beating and the stock market jumping up, but very short term, because the problems will continue and will degenerate into a currency war and crisis of historical proportions. And it doesn't matter if it's Biden or if it's Trump. So my interpretation is that if Donald Trump, if the polls, if the political information gives indication to the currency markets, to the Forex markets, that Donald Trump will lose and the Republicans will lose both the Senate and the House, in that case, you're going to see gold outperforming before the election already and hitting and jumping over 2000. If the market makes an interpretation that Donald Trump will pull it out and that he might win, in that case, the night of the election, like it happened 4 years ago, you'll see the stock market jumping, going up, and you're going to see the dollar going up, and you're going to see gold retracing. But as I said, this is going to be a very short glory, if you want, for the U.S. dollar and for the stock market, because the issues and the problems with Trump is that he's going to take the war with China, but not only with China. Trump has started also a Cold War. I say freezing war because it's beyond cold, not only with China, but with the European Union. So it's the two powerhouses with the United States of the world economy that Trump has declared war simultaneously with the European Union and with China. And his relation.
It's not good to have two front wars, is it?
Exactly. And besides that, his relation with India is on shaky ground because he insulted recently the Prime Minister of India. And you have seen that at this moment, in the last 2 weeks, you had a war between a border war between
I was going to ask you about
and
that.
India. That should have pulled India into the arms of United States at the speed of light. But look what happened. Donald Trump offers help to Modi to negotiate with China, and Modi, rather than jumping in, refused it, turned Trump down, and decided to calm down, to water down the conflict, and to start negotiating with China. The opposite that it should have happened.
I thought that he took that trip during the beginning of the pandemic. I thought maybe a proxy deal was struck, and that's why that border war started. And maybe it was, and maybe he changed his mind.
Yeah. In any case, it's evident that India has a problem with China, but does not want to join the United States. It doesn't trust the United States. Now you add to that, Dale, you add also another war that Trump is involved in. Even if he loves Putin, that's irrelevant. There is a freezing war with Russia at the same time. So United States has decided to declare war to three of the major economic, political, and military powers of the world at the same time. And I think that it is a very big mistake. And I think it collapsing the alliance between European Union, the North Atlantic Alliance, the historical with the United States, it was a major mistake. He should have allied European Union. he should have seduced Putin, Russia, and isolate China. It's the opposite that happened. China managed to isolate the United States, and that is it is a very big mistake. Not to forget that Donald Trump, despite the image of being a capitalist, has become the most socialist president of the United States. Policies more state control, state interference in the economy than even Sanders would not have thought about so much intervention.
I knew you were going there, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fact. I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I'm not going to deny it. It's a fact of life that United States right now, not just United States, but Russia, China, they were already state capitalists. The European Union was kind of a socialist, neo-democrat, if you want, form. But United States has become today as socialist as Europe, as Russia. All the major five powers of the world, India, China, Russia, European Union, and United States, today are state capitalist, which is a modern form of saying national socialist. So they are all socialist in a way, and they are all fighting and controlling the economy in some form or another. You like it or you don't like it, this is reality. I don't like it because I prefer the American capitalist form, that it was not perfect, but it was a capitalist society. Europe, which was much closer to United States with some much more forms of socialist interference with state control companies. And you had on the other side completely state controlled the Russian, the Soviet Union and China. Today, China and Russia are state capitalists. In other words, at the macro level, they are socialists in large corporations controlled by the state. But at the micro level, you have thousands and millions of small businesses in China and in Russia, which are purely capitalist, like in United States and in Europe. And United States and Europe in recent years, since 2008 crisis, government interference in the economy, in the stock market has been enormous. So they are not capitalist anymore. They are state capitalist, in other words, socialist in a form. With United States, because of Donald Trump, which is national socialist, because Donald Trump is very nationalist, while Europe, China, and Russia are what's called international socialists. They see more a global global society, a global socialist, rather than Trump, who sees a very nationalist socialist. So this is why it's causing a problem in the currency world, and it seems evident that we'll come back to gold as a currency. I expected the Corona crisis to decrease or to stop the buying of gold by central banks. It hasn't happened, and the latest data shows that they are still buying, not as much as they were buying last year, but the year is not over.
Why? Because they don't have the resources to add to their reserves. Why would they stop buying or slow down buying gold during the COVID pandemic?
They are still buying it, in my view, Dale, because Donald Trump has done a very big mistake a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. He has weaponized the US dollar payment system. He has on a constant basis threatened countries to freeze their assets if they don't do what he likes. So he told not just Venezuela, he told Putin and the Russians, I'm gonna freeze, I'm gonna confiscate your assets. He told the Chinese recently, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, on a constant basis, the White House personnel, the State Department, the Treasury Department have given hints that they will freeze the dollar assets of China, and that and they threatened Europe with the same freezing, which has made the world scared of holding the dollar. So in periods of crisis, Dale, when there was a major crisis, money was running into dollars. Dollars before 1971 was considered as good as gold. It wasn't gold, but because it was linked to gold, it was considered by the world as good as gold. So people were putting under the mattress gold and dollars at the same time. Since lately, it started changing after 1971 because dollar was delinked from gold. But Donald Trump in the last 2 years has weaponized the dollar with the Treasury Department's war and threatening countries to freeze their assets. So it scared the hell of employees in the central banks, and they are running away. They are selling their treasuries. The charts show clearly that central banks are selling US dollar treasuries since 2008. And what they are doing? Well, at the beginning, they didn't like the euro. The euro was in trouble. There was a risk of the split of the European Union. So they went all in gold. And recently, the euro started to improve its image. So the Russian started to diversify their foreign exchange reserves, international reserves, into some euro, because they also have a lot of trade despite sanctions with the European Union. So they are all the international reserves of Russia today are in large part gold, 21, 22% in gold. There is about 18, 20% in euros. And we don't have the data for China, but I expect that the Chinese are also switching out of US treasuries, and especially with the recent, in the last week or two, statements by Donald Trump and by people in the White House that they will freeze, they will take away. Now, Donald Trump and the White House says, I will take your money, and then the next 5 minutes says, no, I'm not going to do it. I like you. You know, if I did that to you, Dale, if I would tell you I'll steal your wife and children, I'll steal your money, and then I say, hey, I was just joking, wouldn't you be scared? Wouldn't you take precautions?
Yeah, I wouldn't ask you to move in. All right, Dan. So, Dan, you know, I tell you what, it's really, you know, what a mess. And
this is why you see that the demand for gold, despite the fact that that the crisis has hit economically everybody, that's the reason I see. That's my interpretation why gold central banks have not stopped. And there was a survey done by the World Gold Council recently that showed that central banks employees intend to buy gold despite the coronavirus and that's the reason the dollar, a big major mistake for which United States is going to pay a big price for a long time. The dollar used to be the safe haven currency where you run in a period of crisis, or we've seen right now that in this crisis, money has not run into the US dollar, money has run into gold. And that is a very bad signal. The dollar has become from a safe haven to a dangerous hell currency. In other words, I'm scared of the situation, but I'm not going to run in the dollar because Donald Trump just signaled to me that he's going to take my money away. So this is the problem that Donald Trump has created. If you look, and that's what my interpretation is, that look here on the chart that I have.
So even if he's defeated, it's going to take a long time to repair.
Exactly,
ever,
because
right?
psychologically the world doesn't, and there is another problem, Dale. once I found an alternative. When I was a student in Montreal, I worked after school for a friend of my father, a Jewish friend who had a store, a clothes store. And I remember he telling me, I cannot close the store because if I close the store, the client might go to my neighbor, find that he's as good as me, and I lose a client. This is the problem in the market. If people go to some other currency, let's say they go to the euro, or they try the Chinese yuan, and they see that it isn't as bad, they might not come back to the dollar when the dollar changes
Needs to
its
be
attitude.
supported. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the problem when you are kicking a client out. He might not go back even or as easily. It's much better to hold on to him than to kick him out. And Donald Trump is pushing countries to find alternative. Recently, he has been threatening openly and loud China and the European Union. This morning, I was reading that he's putting tariffs on the European Union again.
Yeah.
So that makes the European Union scared. Now, the European Union doesn't hold US dollars. They have a swap agreement with the Fed, but swap agreements, they are not really transfers of dollars. There's been a lot of swaps in the last 6 months between the Fed and the European Union and other central banks. But look at my chart over here. For the last 5 years, there is no sign that money running to the dollar. If money running to the dollar, the index should have been 160 by now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So Dale, you are old as I am, maybe younger than I am. I lived through since 1970 the whole movement. I've been in foreign exchange and the gold market. Now, the highest level of a bull market sentiment in the US dollar, I've seen it in 2000. I was in Montreal at that time, and even me, I changed my billing policy, and I started asking clients to pay me in US dollars. The dollar was supposed to replace not only gold, but all the currencies of the world. In 2000, all the currencies wanted to peg, all those pegs that you see today, the majority were created in 2000 when the dollar was supposed to be mathematically perfect, and it was supposed to replace the gold. And
like the Hong Kong dollar peg and
exactly. That was the euphoria. I've never seen a euphoria as big in dollar as it was in 2000. The recent bull market that started in 2015, I call it a very anemic bull market. It's the worst anemic. Look at my chart. Look at those two and the third bull markets in the US dollar. The last one, if you call that a bull market, for God's sakes, you need glasses.
Well, maybe it's a baby, little baby.
Yeah, but
pig.
You see that each bull market of the US dollar is smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay. Yeah. So this is, you can't deny facts. I look at the data and I see it and I say, listen, show me where the money is running in the US dollar, because all I see is the dollar not moving anywhere and just sitting there for 5 years with small fluctuations on both sides, but mostly being dead asleep.
Yeah, I'm just looking, Dan, for one real huge short squeeze of dollar bears one more time. And then I believe the long-term scenario the dollar bears are talking about is going to happen in spades. And you know what I learned from this interview? It's good to have friends and allies, okay? And I'm glad to call you one. And thank you for edifying our community. I learned from you. You should see all the comments we're getting here about what a great interview. Dale, let him talk because, you know, I have a reputation for interrupting people. And I think I behaved pretty good during this one. Oh, I just sounded like our president. Okay. So anyway, Dan,
So
you and your family,
if
go
you
ahead.
want, Dale, I'll show you just very fast for your. Uh,
Yeah, how people
let
could find you?
No, I'm going to show you
Oh, crypto.
Bitcoin.
Okay.
Crypto, I know some of your followers follow crypto,
Yeah.
so I did some classical technical analysis of a
Uh-huh.
very short. I caution your listeners also that Bitcoin is very illiquid. It has a monopole by a very small group who controls, and they can manipulate the market very easily. And they abuse technical traders by doing that on a constant basis. But if you look at the technicals, pure technical show, the recent bull market has been ended. Okay, you see this blue
Yeah.
trend line has
Uh-huh.
been broken. You have a triangle formation. Triangle formations in technical analysis are very bad signals because they can go bad both ways. They have 50-50 predictive value. But here you have a topping triangle formation and it broke. So you see here, this is manipulation.
Right.
Somebody tried to pull it out to force people, day traders, momentum up, but it failed. So the same guys were forced to sell it themselves and it went back into the triangle. They tried it again. It failed. And here again, now it's going under the triangle. So on pure technicals and nothing else on a short term, that is a bearish image for Bitcoin. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like 7,000 coming. So what a great interview, Dan, you and your family. I hope that you remain safe and you keep up your work. It's good work. You know you tell people about what's happening. You're all those years of having lived through all these different changes in monetary policy and following the gold market. Really, you're a gem. Okay,
Thank you.
you're a gem for the community, and I want to thank you for spending 45 minutes with us today.
Thank you very much, Dale. And the same thing for you and your family and all the listeners. I wish you that despite all the difficult times, that everything is going to end up very well.
Thank you, Dan. All right, everyone, that's a wrap. Dan Popescu, and you could follow him on Twitter, and he has a nice little website, popescugold.com, WordPress, and his Twitter handle is at Popescu, Popescu company, at Popescu Co. And that's going to be a wrap for us today, everyone. Good luck the rest of the day, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Adios. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Have a nice day.